The first of these is when you're working with DataGuard. Now, when you import into a DataGuard environment, so you're importing into the primary, it'll work seamlessly. All of your import operations will get replicated to the standby via redo apply. So we're not skipping anything on your primary when we're importing with DataPump. You do want to make sure that your standby file management is auto, and might want to have your DB file name convert as well. Now, if you're doing this to create a pluggable database, what you can do is you can create your pluggable database on the primary. Now, that create pluggable database command will get replicated to the standby, and you'll have an empty PDB on both sides. Then you can simply import into the new PDB on the primary. Everything will get replicated to the standby. Just works perfectly. Now, as a fallback mechanism, you might want to use DataPump if you're upgrading, and especially if you have to, say, raise compatible as part of your upgrade operation for whatever reason. So you're going, in this case, say 11204 to 19C, and if you raise compatible, you wouldn't be able to downgrade. But what you could do is you can export from 19C with the version parameter and say version equals 11204. What we will do then is we will export from your 19C database, and then you can import that dump file back into your 11204 database. Now, if there's anything in 19C that isn't supported in 11204, we will skip those objects in 19C. So some examples there. What if you had a table that had a name that was longer than 30 bytes? You're using long identifiers. Well, we would not be able to export that table and bring it back to 11204 because we can't just truncate the table name. But for things that are supported in the older version, we can still go back even from 19 all the way to 11204 if needed. So you import into the database and everything should be fine because that's really an 11204 dump file that we've produced. So again, to create that dump file compatible with the lower release, use the version parameter. You could say version equals compatible. So let's say you are on a 19C database and you had left compatible at 12.2. You could do that and you could get a 12.2 dump file out of it. Or you could, of course, say version equals latest. That's going to be the default. That's whatever you're using in that database. In terms of network mode, importing over a DBlink can be really useful when you don't have access to disk space to store a dump file. It can be useful for migrating to the cloud, for example, if you don't want to copy a dump file up to object store before importing it into the cloud. When you import over a DBlink, what we're doing is a simultaneous export from the source and import into the target. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, that's why we don't have parallel metadata yet, because we're just grabbing individual objects and immediately importing them into the target system. Import over a DBlink is fully restartable, just like any other DataPump job, but there are some differences. For example, I mentioned no metadata parallelism. Also, we have some limitations that are born of using DBlinks. Over a DBlink, you're not allowed to select long or long raw data. We did come up with a clever workaround for that. If your source database is 12.2, you can specify access method equals direct path, and then instead of using external tables to do an insert as select over that DBlink, we will move using direct path, and you can move those long and long raw data tables over a DBlink. We can use some parallelism over a DBlink for data, but we're limited to doing partitions or subpartitions or tables in parallel. What we can't do is invoke the parallel query engine on a large unpartitioned table and have all those PX processes doing things over the DBlink. That is, again, a limitation of DBlinks and not something that we're able to get around. The other thing is that importing over a DBlink is not something you can really do for a downgrade. You couldn't log into an 11204 database, create the DBlink to 19, and pull the data over that way. You would have to use dump files.